Hi, today we'll be discussing about SOAP web services. We all know that there are two types of web services we can create. One is SOAP based web service, other is REST architecture style web service, RESTful web services. SOAP web services follow simple object access protocol to communicate. That's why we create a SOAP services using this protocol. And SOAP web services generally we design and use them for building a complex systems. Let's say the application wants a web service in a more secured way, with the standardized protocols defined, and the proper schema definition. If this is a kind of requirement, we would generally consider the SOAP web services comparing to the RESTful web services. So SOAP web services are more secure comparing to the RESTful web services. That is why most of the banking and financial sectors or telecom sectors, most of the banking sectors, as far as I worked, right? I work for American Express client. It is one of the banking domain, right? They used SOAP web services rather than RESTful web services. I'll explain how you can create a SOAP web services using Spring Boot. You can also create a SOAP web services using other ways. But the latest and trending technology is a Spring Boot, and I want to explain that how we can do it in a Spring Boot. So for that, what we need to do, initially we need to create palm file. I will explain how to create a project using maven build tool. You can see first we need to include a visital dependency, visital 4j dependency. Visital 4j dependency is generally used for generating a visital. When you are creating a visital, you need a visital dependency, visital 4j dependency. I'll explain what is WSDL. It is a web service description language 4j. We need to include that in the POM file, and after that we need to create XML schema. We need to define that, right? What is this XML schema definition? It is a XML file where we specify all the schema details. I mean, what should be our request, what should be our response, and what are the attributes inside the request method and the response method. We need to define all these things inside a XML schema definition file. It can also be exported as a visitor file. We also call it as a web service description language because we are writing in XML form, right? You see this, we are actually defining the XML request and XML response. If any complex types are involved, we are also defining the here using XML language, which is why we call it as XML schema file. Generally, Spring web service will automatically export this as a visible file. When we export this file, its extension will be WSDL, nothing but web service description language. Right, you can see we need to store this XML schema with the .xsd. So here under resources folder of the Spring Boot project, we have a meta-nf, and under meta-nf there is a schemas folder. Under schemas folder, we created a countries ws.xsd file. We save that XML definition file, schema definition file, the xsd folder. Now you see, just understand how we created this XML definition schema. For any web service, we need a request, and we also require a response, right? And in the request, we will specify what are all the attributes we are going to send. So if you see here, we mention it as a complex type, and the name, it is a name. We're just sending a name here, right? And uh, in the response, you can see we declare it as a complex type, but the type is TNS colon country. It's not a normal uh, basic data type. It is a User defined data type. You see, we want to retrieve a data in the form of country class, and its type is a country type. For the country type, we need to define again the attributes that are involved inside the country class, a country entity. You can consider it like that. So again, what we are doing in the complex entity, complex type name equal to country, and this country entity of type country is returning a name and name attribute, population attribute, currency attribute. There are three attributes are being returned here, right? Okay, and again, you see here the currency attribute again type of currency type. It is again user defined data type. You need to again create the values for it. So that is why again finally we created a simple type currency, where it is base of string type. We are passing three values: euro and GBP and PLN, right? So that way we are passing these three types of currencies for this currency type. So this is how we define the request response for a particular web service. So this is nothing but a XML schema definition. It is called also WSDL file. So using this WSDL file, we can generate our artifact. We can generate required classes. What this will do simply, whenever we are creating a website, what we will do in Java, we will create a classes, right? For each class we will create what are the request details, what are the request attribute, request entity attribute, a request model attribute, or response model attributes. We will define that, and after defining it, we generally use service, create service and repository. We will call that model and we'll get the data. We'll map the data to model and we'll render back that is a general process. But what we are doing here, instead of creating model classes, entity classes, all the requests and responses, we are defining everything inside XML. It is a visible, it is a contract. Why do we need to define like this? Because we want to share this contract to some other third party people so that they can generate it, right? They don't need to recreate from the beginning. So we are mentioning everything inside a contract. That is why we call it as a contract first approach. First, we will define this XML schema definition, a WSDL file, in which we actually define all the contracts that are going to be used for this particular web service. Let's say tomorrow, if I want to share my contract to other person, they want to consume my web service, right? They want to consume my web service, which was developed using a SOAP protocol. How do they do that? They cannot rewrite everything from the scratch, right? They need these artifacts. They need all the classes, requests, response models that are involved inside this contract. Then what I will do, I will simply share this WSDL file to them. They will generate the artifacts. That way they can actually invoke my service from their client, right? It would be very easy. And also, this inside this XML we can simply specify security attributes also. WSDL also providing web service security attributes. So that is why SOAP protocol is more secure comparing to RESTful web services. It is well defined, well structured, and more secure. That is why most of the banking and financial institutes prefer to use SOAP based web services rather than RESTful web services. Another reason is, SOAP services may also support various protocols like TCP and SMTP, other protocols as well. But REST service mostly stick to the JSON and XML type. But SOAP service, it can support. There is a flexibility of supporting different protocols. But remember, we are just defining everything, all our contract details inside a single XML file. Okay, you don't need to bother about creating different classes and going through code base and seeing what are the request classes, response classes, what are the attributes. You don't need to do that. And your client also, whoever is going to consume this web service, they don't need to bother about creating everything from the scratch. You will simply share this WSDL file. That is why it is a flexible model of generating web services, more secure because SOAP protocol is more secure. It is also inbuilt in providing many security related attributes, encryption related attributes, right? That is why SOAP based protocol is very good type of web service generation. You can see now I have created my WSDL file. WSDL file means XSD, my XML schema definition. I defined and designed my request responses and what are the attributes required to for this particular web service. And after that, what I am doing here, you see, I need to generate a Java classes based on this XSD, based on this WSDL file. For that, I need JAXP2 Maven plugin, right? I need that, and also I need to provide the path of this my XSD file. So it was stored under resource folders under schema, my schema under schemas folder. So I need to provide the path. So when I run this, it will automatically generate all the classes as mentioned in the XSD XML file, all the Java classes. It will generate it, you don't need to create it. That is the beauty of this contract first approach. You will simply define everything in XML file, what are your requests and responses, everything you will define there. Then when you generate it, it will generate all the Java classes, request classes, response classes, attributes inside, all those things will be generated there as per your contract. After generating it, you need to create a repository, yeah, as we generally create in a Spring Boot, right? We will create a repository and we will set the data. Here we just mock the static data. In general, you will connect to the database and you will get the data, right? So you need to create it, and you see here where we are using the generated classes. So now I want to create so you can see endpoint. I am creating endpoint here. I create a country service endpoint. In my service endpoint, I annotated with this at the rate endpoint, so that here you can see there is a method public get country response of type and get country method inside at the rate request payload get country request class, and inside that you can see get country response. So where are we referring this get country response and get country request classes? We have not created these pojos, right, in models. How are we referring it them? Because they were generated on fly when when we included that WSDL file, they were generated automatically on fly. So that way you are able to um, get all the artifacts. You can refer any pojos models that were generated as part of your WSDL request response. You can set the data, proper data, you can render the data using endpoint. At the rate endpoint annotation register the class with the Spring WS as a potential candidate for processing incoming SOAP messages. At the rate payload route annotation is then used by Spring web service, to pick the handler method based on the message namespace and local part. Request at the rate request payload annotation for request, for indicating the request, incoming request, at the rate response period for response, returning the response. So that way it is very straightforward and simple for generating the this web service. You can see how to expose my web service. Okay, how to expose this web service? You can see here there is a configuration classes. I created it. You can see I'm setting a port type name and then location URI and target namespace. um, okay, XML schema. So if I want to expose it, I need to create a configuration classes in which I will simply specify my my web service endpoint, target namespace, and the name, it port type. That way it will be exposed. Okay, you can simply test the application. You can simply test your application in the SOAP UI or any REST client. Basically, you should use a SOAP UI or you can also use a curl command. You see how you are going to test it here, right? Create a file called request.xml that contains the following soap request. Okay, just we created some, again, some xsd. It is a soap request. As a result, you will see this one. So you need to give this request in your soap UI, and the response will be again XML type. You will get this data. So that way you can test this soap web service. So always remember, there are two ways you can generate a soap web service. One is context first, top down approach. Second thing is bottom up approach. Top down means a context first approach. Contract first means you need to create a contract digital file. First you have to provide the contract to the client, right? That way they will generate the web service and they will consume that. Next thing is a bottom up approach, reverse approach means you will create all the classes, java classes, and you will generate the digital file. Based on the java classes, you will generate the digital file. So that is how we will create this the soap web services. And always remember, the web services are very standard web services for most of the banking and financial institutes. Most of the banking and financial clients, they prefer to develop web services using SOAP protocol rather than RESTful web services. The reason is it is more of a standard and structured and more secure way of developing a web services. And also you can simply share the visual file to the client, any client, if they want to access it. Since spring this soap web services inbuilt provide security encryption and security tags, you can simply secure your messages, things and all. That is why the soap web services is very good kind of web services methodology, in which you can generate a more secure web services, standard web services that follow some rules, policies. You can define all those things as per your banking client, you can do that. So this is the way of creating a soap web services. I hope you understood the concept of creating a soap web service. Thank you very much.